Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is Dendrobium hercoglossum. In amongst all of my dendrobiums, it's probably one of my favourite blooms, but despite that, it grows differently to anything else I've got. And as I've just got this down, because it was in the way of what else I want to get at, autumn has come. Yeah? It's dropping leaves like it's going out of fashion. Now, it's always dropped leaves this time of year, but this year it's dropping a lot more. Now, should I go into panic mode? Well, with this plant, no. And I'll try and explain why. See, I love doing this. I love creating autumn, falling leaves. Right, growth pattern. Chucks out new canes, yeah? Nice set of new canes up the top here, growing well and still growing now. If I stop watering this, those canes will stop growing. So although I don't water it anywhere near as much in the winter, and I do take the feed down to very, very infrequently and incredibly weak, but it still gets a little bit of food. Something's got to generate energy to keep those canes going, and just pure water isn't probably going to do it. So it does get a little bit of feed, but it is a very little amount, and it is very infrequently during the winter. But let's have a look at some of the older canes now, because I've got every type of cane on here now. Now, if we take a look at this one round the back, this long spindly thing, this would be one of the canes that was on it when I got it. And it was probably about that long. And it grew and extended. And they go in sections. You can see that section there has the stumps from the flowers that came after that year's growth. The flowers come the following year. Then it extended again, yeah, and some more flower spikes came the following year. But it's finished. So that cane may have 1 or 2 spikes next year, but probably not. It's finished, it's spent, I think is the expression. There's one round here, look, that's down to its last leaf. It's flowered right back up the length of that cane. That wouldn't have all been in 1 year. That would have been over a 2-year period probably. But it's not going to grow anymore. It's had it. Now, next spring, the canes with no leaves get their last chance to bloom. They may not, but it's their last chance. After that, those canes are coming off, because they make the plant look untidy, and it's got more than enough new canes coming on to replace them. So I will tidy the plant up. But okay, so we've now seen new canes still actively growing. We've seen canes that have finished growing. They've done their thing, and over the years have produced marvellous blooms. They tend to be the ones up the back, the long spindly ones, and most of those were there when I got the plant. But then we've got the in-between canes. Canes that are dropping their leaves from a section of the cane up to about there. That cane is going to drop those leaves. Now that was last year's growth. Yeah? So it's finished with those leaves. But that's where the blooms are going to come in the spring. You listening to me? No, I'm talking to the plant, not you lot. You listening? That's where the blooms come from. Got it? Jolly good. But the cane's still growing. Yeah? Ooh, look at that mealybug. I'll have him in a minute. So I've only just got this down out of the roof. So this cane has got that year's growth on it. That's this year's growth, that extension. That will be the following year's blooms. Yeah? It might even bloom from the base near the intersection with the year's growth in the spring. But as you can see back on that cane, that extension from that, you can see the join there where it stopped growing 1 year and then started again. That's where the blooms are going to come in the spring. And the following spring, they'll be on that section. And probably that will be the end of that cane after that amount of growth. There's another one we can see here. It's just a pattern that it forms. The oldest part, there's an odd flower spike there. That was how it was when I got it, I expect. And then it's extended this amount and it's still actively growing. So it's still got some blooming to do. Yeah. So that's how this one grows. It doesn't really stop growing. It keeps going. So again, you know, check your plant. What's your plant doing? And if it's still growing new leaves, it's not going to carry on doing that if you stop watering it. you know, those canes will stall. They'll produce their last leaf and think, help, I'm dying of thirst. I'd better stop growing. Well, if you want that to happen, do carry on. But I don't. So that's the pattern on this type of Dendrobium, and it's the only one I've got that does this. So it's special. And it's always bloomed well for me without a proper winter rest. And the reason this one is not going to get a proper winter rest is because of those new canes. So I have to treat this one differently. And what I'm basically getting back to is look at your plant. See what it's doing. How is it growing? If you haven't had it long, you don't know yet. But when you've had a plant quite a few years, like I've had this one, you get to see the way it grows each year, where the new growth starts from. You know, how much it grows in a year. Is that the end of that growth? And in most orchids, that probably is. You know, you get like a cattleya, grows a new pseudo-bulb, it pushes up, it pushes out its 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 leaves if it's confused, and then that's it. That growth has finished. If you're lucky, you then get a sheath and you get some buds straight out of the top, whatever type of cattleya it is, and then that growth's done. It continues photosynthesizing with those leaves, and it helps store energy for the whole plant and produce some new growths. But you get to know the pattern. You get to know at what time of year, generally speaking, the new growths start. Are they early spring starters, in which case you need to get some water and then gradually increase the feed to get those new growths on the go? This one starts its new growths quite late, sort of end of April, May time. Now I know that because I've had it a number of years. So just get to know your plants, yeah? Get to know their habits, get to know how they grow. And after a few years of owning a plant, they become, like, not commonplace, they just become easier because you know what's coming next and you can plan for it. You might have to change their position in the winter. You know, you might have to place it in a warmer place because where it is in the summer, in the winter, is just too cold. So have a think about that. And while I'm there, I'm pretty damn sure that that is shadows. There's buds in there, isn't there? Come on, agree with me, somebody. It's the first spike I've ever had. That's some Laelia anceps, species Laelia. And oh, if that's buds, I'm over the moon, because if it is buds, there's more than one. Oh, come on, get on with it. Okay, so just a quickie on one specific plant. Oh, what else was I going to do? That opened its first bloom today. Yeah. That's Encyclia cordigera, but it's actually got a clone name if I can dig the tag out. Oh, why are the tags always around the back when you want them? Siang Yu. But it's effectively a named clone of the species, so as near as damn it's the species really. But yeah, that's its first bloom opened. And there's me thinking the spikes had stalled. Well, they haven't stalled at all. They were just slow. Okay, so a new bloom for today. Have we got any else? Other new stuff? Yes. Well, I don't know whether I can get at it now. I've buried it. If I can get this this particular twinkle out the way, the one behind it's just opened. That hasn't got a name. It's just Oncidium Twinkle Pink. I don't think pink's its name. It's its colour. But that's how I labelled it, so I know what to expect. But yeah, that's just starting its blooms. There's quite a few buds on that one. That's doing quite well. That's one of the Ceramis project plants. So some of them have done okay in Ceramis. This Twinkle Cinnamon, that's also in Ceramis, and I mean that one's done exceptionally well. That is a massive load of spikes. I think that leaf's not long for this world, but leaves don't last forever. If you start seeing all your leaves go in that colour on an Oncidium, I think you need to worry. But an odd leaf like that going over on one of the oldest pseudo-bulbs is not a worry. Panic not. This looks like a twinkle, but in actual fact it's not. It's a miniature Oncidium, and it does have proper Oncidium-shaped flowers, like that, only tiny. Yeah, the twinkles are not typical Oncidium blooms. They do have an odd shape, far more compact. Yeah, But that one does have little Oncidium type blooms on it. It's not actually my plant, that one. And that's Oncidium Tiny Twinkle. And that's got one spike on it. I nearly lost this thing. I'll show you why. Bugs got at it. And they dug a hole in that pseudo bulb and started some rot into what basically was the base where all the other pseudo bulbs were coming from. And boy, did that set that plant back. That really stalled it. I mean, I cured it. I basically filled that hole. It was a slug hole originally, but I filled that hole with cinnamon. I jam-packed it like that. And then it got an outbreak of scale and it had to get sprayed for that. So it's had a lot of troubles, that little plant, but it's managing to put a spike out and it's got some new growths coming on now. So things are looking up for that little baby. There's nothing else that's new, so I'll leave it at that for today. I have got other things to do today. Who just said get on with that draw, Roger? Oh, it was me, wasn't it? Yeah, I will get on with it any minute now. I just got to finish this bit of watering and then we'll do the redraw. Okay, thanks for dropping by. And anybody who's got a hercoglossum that's new to it, just have a think about its unusual growth pattern. This does not grow like many other dendrobiums. Now, other people may have one that grows similar, but I haven't. And I've got a lot of dendrobiums and none of them grow like this one. So this one is different. Not quite sure why it should be that different, but it just is. Okay, thanks for dropping by. See you next time. Just going to add this on the end. This is my Prostegia, I think. Prismata carpa, anyway, one of those two. And if you look at the base of this new growth, you can see I've just torn two sheaths off, well, trimmed them off. And that's why. That is soft scale. Yeah? They tend to be a paler colour. You can see some adults forming near the top, the scaly little bits. But it's that white fluffy stuff that's the danger, because that can spread. That's the crawler stage. They ain't going to be doing much more crawling today, that's for sure. But I just thought I'd show you that. That's what the sheath looked like from the outside. Yeah? You can just see the spots. And that is what vigilance is all about. I thought that plant was clean. It had some scale at the base of the older bulbs and I thought I'd shifted it. It only needs one of those little white crawly things to escape your spray and get in behind another sheath, and that's what happens. That's an outbreak, effectively. Now, that's a self-contained plant. These little beasties don't travel too far. They tend to stay mainly on the plant they're on. But if you've got plants all squashed up together, then they don't know the difference between one plant and the next. It's just somewhere to crawl to turn into the adult stage and produce more of the little beggars. So take care. I did say I have got some bugs in here, and this soft scale has been my bane this year, simply because of these, the youngsters. The adults are quite easy to get rid of. You can normally see them, because they tend to crawl up the leaves a bit before they turn into the adults. But if they get in behind sheaths, especially cattleyas, things like that, and then breed, instead of having a few of them crawling around, you've got hundreds and hundreds, little beggars. Anyway, those are not long for this world now. I'm just tagging this on the end because that was the last plant to water today, and if I hadn't seen that little outline, that doesn't look much, that could just be classed as a little bit of discoloration, but when you've seen it all before, yeah, especially they didn't look as bad as that on the plant, because if you could imagine, that was tight up to the plant. But when you see spots on the inside of a sheath, they shouldn't be there. And like I've said, with any plant, anything on your plant that doesn't look like it should be there needs to be dead. I've killed specks of dust, I'm sure I have, just as a precaution. I know that sounds silly, but if I see specks on a leaf, I assume there's something living. And if it's living, it needs to be dead. So as a precaution, you know, sometimes dust gets sprayed. Well, at least it shines the leaves up, doesn't it? Okay. Just a little addition tucked on the end. Okay, that last little episode with those that soft scale tucked in behind that sheath like that. That's it. Last straw. So this stuff works quite well. I'm not going to knock it, but it works on what it can get at. So, you know, it's a soapy wash type thing. It's got a little bit of a boost in it because it says it's got a growth stimulant. It's got a bit of added nitrogen. It's no big deal. The idea being that it provides a foliar feed to a plant that's, you know, suffered a bit because it's had some pests, so it gives it a bit of a kick. And I'm sure it does that, although I've never noticed any major differences in the leaves that have been sprayed, I must admit. But anyway, this works on a general basis, but it is a suffocation type thing. So any pest has to be totally covered in the stuff or it will survive. So it has limitations. And after the little episode with what I've just found and looking around at the other sorts of places on other sorts of plants, I mean, have a look at that. You know, that's a Phalaenopsis type. That's a nice old dry sheath. That's how they are. Well, do I know if there's anything behind that or not? No, I don't. Cattleyas are the same. You know, they've got sheaths. Now, you can very carefully try to peel them all off if you want to, but it's tedious and you'll probably end up breaking your new growths. So there's a limit to what you can do to remove hidey places, and they will find them. And I know they're in here, I know they're lurking in places, and I know there's going to be some that I've missed. So I'm taking the bull by the horns. This is not like me normally, but the whole plant room is now going to get sprayed with Provado Ultimate Bug Killer Concentrate number 2. I've done some work, and quite honestly, out of the chemicals that are available, that's the only strong one left to us. Yeah? And it's got a very careful measurer on it to make sure you don't overdose your plant. So that's a nice little bonus. Because what they don't realise is it says 1 measure per litre of water. Well, if you put it in 3/4 of a litre, you've increased the strength. So there's always ways. You can always get round it. But I wouldn't recommend overdosing with chemicals. But that's what I've done. I've just gone onto eBay, found some of that stuff. I'm surprised it's still around and hasn't been flipping stopped because it is pretty strong stuff. And I've ordered some. When it arrives, I'm going to pick a mild period where I know I'm not going to get cold nights in case any of the liquid spray is hanging around and goes into the night time with water, you know, moisture on the plants. I try to avoid that. But the whole place is going to get it. And the beauty of that stuff, it's a contact killer. Anything it hits is going to die. Well, that's similar to the soapy wash, only it's a chemical kill, not a suffocation kill. So it's going to work, basically. But in addition to that, it's a good systemic killer. It eats its way into the tissues of the plants. And then anything that decides to take a bite out of that plant poisons itself. Which means things that are tucked away inside of sheaths and hidey holes like that don't really escape. Once that systemic function gets its way round the plant into all parts of the plant, they're doomed. Now it's quite a strong thing, so the repeat application, I mean, it says no more than 4 times a year, for instance. That really tells you how strong it is. This soapy wash stuff, I could spray that every day without doing any harm. It's not really a chemical anyway. But yeah, so the whole lot's going to get it. Every single plant. Whether it's infested, whether it's got bugs, whether it's ever had a bug is irrelevant. It only needs one of those little crawler stages of that soft scale to escape, and it will form an adult. It will lay eggs and produce another couple of dozen out from underneath that little shell, which then migrate to other places and get into hidey holes. And so it goes on. And that's how it's been going on all through this season since I got the little things. Chances are they came in on a plant. I doubt if they came in from outside. They came in on a plant that I looked over and didn't see any problems with, but as I said, it only needs a couple of those to be tucked in behind a sheath and then you've got them. And I've certainly had them this year. So that's it. The whole lot's going to get it. Every single plant, whether it needs it or not, is going to get absolutely drowned in a systemic pesticide that kills soft scale. And it kills those crawlers. It kills anything that takes a bite out of your plant. Now there is a downside there. There's me. I don't tend to eat my orchids, although apparently there are some edible ones, but not mine. But I do have my cats come in here. Now they've never touched these plants, ever. But I've now got to take extra precautions. You know, so Pussycat might not be allowed in for a while, just in case he decides to take a chomp out of one of the leaves. Now I think the strength is geared up to insect-type bugs, not great big overweight cats, but you never know. So I'll have to take those precautions. Okay, once again, thanks for dropping by. See you next time.